Hello, my name is Tom Bailey, and with my partner, Paul Fox, we present PIL, professional ethics courses to school and system leaders. We also have an Act 48 course, and we are interested in public education as we're both former educators ourselves, and we know that the many things are going on in the public schools today. And so I just as an introduction, I was at the retirement luncheon for the high school I used to teach at 2 weeks ago. And there were about 100 to 200 people in that room. And a person got up to interview the retiree, and then the retiree spoke. And I'm here to tell you that that school is going through teachers that are retiring are not being replaced. Morale is low, but when most of the retiring teachers spoke to their peers, they said, always remember the heart and soul of this district is in this room right now. So having said that, we're also here to tell you that we know that coming up are requirements for all active educators to take professional ethics. And so our plan was to give you some idea over the summer here of what some of the topics are that you're going to see. So let's take a look at some of those. We're having a series of question and answer sessions based upon these topics. Now, one of the first ones is you may have heard about the William Penn versus PDE court case, which has gone to the Commonwealth Court, and the judge has come back with her initial decision. And what I've been doing is following that and giving some updates as to the process of the William Penn versus PDE court case. We did that our session 1, and it's recorded. It's on my website. Paul last week looked at the model code of ethics for educators, and that's also was recorded. These last 4 are what are called the state competencies for professional ethics. Every professional ethics course is going to have to cover these topics. Model code of ethics for educators. The one we're going to do today is the PA code of professional practice and conduct. Another one is the actual PA Professional Standards and Practices Commission. They're the ones that hear issues of professional discipline, and it's based upon a statute, a state statute called the Educator Discipline Act. So we're offering these through about half hour, but we also want to hear from people. And so there'll be a question and answer session at the end. So let's get started. Our agenda for today is we're going to look at the background of the PA Code of Conduct. Then we're going to compare what a code of ethics is versus a code of conduct. What Paul discussed last week was actually a code of ethics. Then we're going to read some sections from the PA Code of Conduct so you can see the actual language that affects your teaching certificate. And we like to combine both the theory of a topic, but also with some application. We facilitate case study discussion by our participants, and then we're going to answer the question and comment session. So background. In the 1970s, the Pennsylvania General Assembly passed a statute requiring the commission, Professional Standards and Practices Commission, to write a code of conduct. I'm a practicing attorney, and I have a code of disciplinary rules I have to follow, but there hadn't been one for the educators. So in 1992, the commission did write a professional code of conduct which applied to educators and had several provisions in it which we were to follow. Now, I need to admit, and Paul said the same thing, we were teaching in that time period and we didn't know there was a code of conduct. But I would like to share one paragraph from the 1992 code, which no longer exists, but it shows you a little different, that the framework is a little different for the earlier one. Professional educators recognize their primary responsibility to the student and the development of the student's potential. Central to that development is the professional educators valuing the worth and dignity of every person, student and colleague alike, the pursuit of truth, devotion to excellence, acquisition of knowledge, and democratic principles. I like that because I was a government teacher for years, and I thought it was great that that was held in such high esteem for all teachers. To those ends, the educator engages in continuing professional development and keeps current with research and technology. Educators encourage and support the use of resources that best serve the interests and needs of students. Within the context of professional excellence, the educator and student together explore the challenge and the dignity of the human experience. If you teach long enough, you'll have several of those examples, and I certainly did. I was teaching one day in a classroom, and a student went by. I had the semester before, and he stuck his head in the door, and he said, "Hey, Mr. B, you ought to turn the TV on. A plane just flew into the World Trade Center." I said, "Tim, all right, go ahead. Go to class, please." And about a minute later, a teacher came in and said, "You better turn the TV on." So by the time I turned the TV on, the second plane, we watched the second plane hit the second tower. And I didn't know what was going on. And the kids didn't know what was going on. So I said, "Let's just watch this. We'll find out more information." And the place was stone quiet. We looked at the challenge and the dignity of the human experience, and we learned a lot about each other that day. And the second part that made that even more relevant is I was teaching in Westmoreland County, and Westmoreland County was the flight route for one of the planes that hadn't yet crashed. And as we went through that material, we saw that the people on that flight were calling the Westmoreland County 911, and they were giving distress signals to them. And so where I taught, we then kept the kids longer. We eventually started dismissing the students because parents were calling and taking their kids out of school. So I say all of that just to give you an example that sometimes you're in circumstances which definitely make you feel like you're looking at the dignity and the challenge of the human experience. So the 1992 code was in place, and it continued, I would say, through the time of Jerry Sandusky. Jerry Sandusky was a Penn State assistant football coach, and he was the one that was found guilty of several sexual assaults. That was 2012. And then in 2013, the Pennsylvania General Assembly passed the Act 126, requiring the mandatory reporting. And I feel that that led up to, we're going to see in the next slide, an increase in the number of educator misconduct complaints. And so that's some of the background about what we're looking. So let's look at that slide.
Welcome to Scott Martin for coming in. Nice to see you, sir, or not see you, but have you here.
So here we are at 2011. And in 2012, Sandusky gets sentenced. And in 2013, actually December 2013, that Act 126 goes into effect. Look at the number of educator misconducts that were filed thereafter, sometimes 2 times as many as had been in 2011. And it continues to 2019. I had actually retired in 2018, and I wanted to learn more about the commission. So I was in the commission meeting room, and I heard the commissioners say, we have to take steps to address this marked increase in educator misconducts. And sure enough, they referred it to the Pennsylvania State Board of Education, and within 1 or 2 years, the PA Code of Conduct was amended and the professional ethics requirement added. So I'd like to compare what a code of ethics is compared to a code of conduct. And Paul last week went over the model code of ethics, which is an excellent example of this. And if you go back and look at that video, you'll see it's very general, but it's a way of starting conversations. It's a way of getting teachers to look at what happens in their classroom, how they could react to it, and it allows people to have these integrated discussions. But the code of conduct is much different. And these are what I think are the key parts of any code of conduct. First of all, it's going to be written and enforced by a government board or a commission. For attorneys, ours is enforced by actually the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. This is the most important one, I believe, though. Everybody that's a member of that profession or that organization has to have some common values that they share and that holds and binds the group together. Based upon there are expected conduct that you have to follow, or forbidden conduct that you may not commit. Finally, there's going to be a complaint process. And the complaint process will have a filing process. Sometimes they'll have the form itself, who it goes to, and that's going to involve the trier of fact. For Pennsylvania, our trier of fact is this Professional Standards and Practices Commission. And then there's going to be possible sanctions. And for us as teachers, it's possible sanction to our teaching certificate. So let's look at the PA Code of Conduct. Now, it was amended in 2021. So this is the amended version. But I think one way for you to become familiar with it is to see it and know some of the specific terms. So the mission. The mission is the Professional Standards and Practices Commission is committed to providing leadership and improving the quality of education in this Commonwealth by establishing high standards for the preparation, certification, practice, and ethical conduct of the teaching profession. That's the only paragraph I know to have been both in the 1992 and the 2021 version. Introduction. Professional conduct defines interactions between the individual educator and the students, the employing agencies, and other professionals. Generally, the responsibility for professional conduct rests with the individual educator. Now, when I first read this, I found it unusual. Here it is, the state regulation is saying the burden is upon the educator, but it actually fits. But we didn't know about this when we were teaching. And I think that's one reason the professional ethics requirement is now, wherever you take your professional ethics, you're going to have to realize that it's your burden to learn this document because it is part of being a professional. Paragraph B, in recognition of the magnitude of the responsibility inherent in the education process and by virtue of the desire to maintain the respect. I'm going to say, I believe that portion was put in because of the number of increased educator misconduct complaints. The commission wants to make sure that the colleagues and the public still has confidence in us as a profession and confidence of their colleagues, students, parents, and the community. Educators shall be guided in their conduct by their commitment, this is very important, to their students, colleagues, and profession. That focuses, again, from the PA Code of Conduct. Definitions. I normally go through many more of these. For this session, I'm giving you a sampler. I think that boundaries is very important. It's in a lot of the court cases about educator misconduct. And it's defined as the verbal, physical, emotional, and social distances between an educator and a student. Electronic communication, also not in the prior version. Electronic communication, a communication transmitted by means of electronic device, such as a telephone, cellular telephone, computer, computer network, personal data. I cannot see this because of my...
It's okay, I can read it. Assistant or pager, including emails, text messages, instant messages, and communications made by means of an internet website, such as social media and social networking websites or mobile device applications.
All right, thank you, Paul. More definitions here. Please look at these. Next section is literally the commitment to students. This is the most important one in the entire document, in my opinion. The primary professional obligation of educators is to serve, is to the students they serve. If an educator is ever wondering, what should I do first? What's my number one priority? They spell it out right there. But I need to show you some new ones. These are also not 1992. The educator shall not furnish, provide, or encourage students or underage persons to use, possess, or unlawfully distribute alcohol, tobacco, vaping products, illegal or unauthorized drugs, or knowingly allow any student or underage person to consume alcohol, tobacco, vaping products, or illegal or unauthorized drugs in the presence of the educator. That was not there in 1992. So the supplying is one thing, but now the educator is not needing to be present. Page 2, and this is the entire document. This is the PA Code of Conduct, and it's available through the Commission website. So a student shall not, shall an educator shall not, with a student or minor, including inappropriate communication achieved by electronic communication. Inappropriate communication includes communications that are sexually explicit, that include images, depictions, jokes, stories, or other remarks of a sexualized nature that can be reasonably interpreted as flirting or soliciting sexual contact or a romantic relationship, or that comment on the physical or sexual attractiveness or the romantic or sexual history, activities, preferences, desires, or fantasies of either the educator or the student.
You know, it really makes you upset to know that they had to spell that out in such detail. But this is coming from the misconducts, which are also up on the Commission's website, and you can find out what educators have done. Educators who've lost their job have done.
Yes. Okay, next one. In fulfilling their commitment to colleagues, educators shall not threaten, coerce, or discriminate against a colleague who, in good faith, those are two very important words, reports or discloses to a governing agency actual or suspected violations of law, agency regulations, or standards. My understanding is that 7 was put in there to protect persons, fellow educators that did the mandatory reporting. If they did it in good faith, the person that was the accused may not threaten, coerce, or discriminate against them for that reason. Again, there's many more there. The next one is for fulfilling the commitment to the profession. Educators shall accurately report all information required by the local school board or governing board, state education agency, federal agency, or state or federal law. This, to me, I think, is also a reference to Act 126, because now, by our own code of conduct, we have to report any suspect that we think may be involved with an Act 126 violation. What I'd like to do now is just set the stage for what we do for our case studies. We feel a case study, just like kids in class, some students read very well, they're visual learners, other people want to engage, that's how they learn. And so we go through a case study, and we go through a set of questions that were written by the Connecticut State Department of Education. And then we use those to break down the ethical issues. And we end up with, the last question deals with how should this be dealt with proactively, this ethical conundrum.
This is what's very unique about our courses, because we will actually encourage administrators to create a PLC and follow up the same thing that we're doing right now with a case study with their staff. Maybe even have an ethics committee where they can talk about hypothetical ethics issues.
So once again, this is all taken from Connecticut State Department of Education. It's one of their professional responsibility sessions. So the first question is, what possible issues or concerns might this scenario raise? And we're going to show you one of our fact scenarios here. Number two, how could this situation become a violation of school entity policy, the PA Code of Practices, or other PA law? Number three, in this situation, what are some potential negative consequences for the educator's students, fellow educators, and the school community at large? Last one, what responses, actions will result in a more positive outcome, and or what proactive measures might be considered? We recommend when we break the groups up into groups of no more than 5, that they discuss them. They should be ready to share their responses, and they do not all have to agree, but we do want to hear what their responses were. So here's the fact scenario. Paul, can I ask you to read it, please?
This is one about teacher-student boundary. Ms. S is a young math teacher who is very popular with her students. She frequently offers students extra help after school, so it's not uncommon to see her students visiting her classroom after school. She has tutored one of her students, Melissa, in biology and English when she was failing the last 2 years. During that time, Ms. S has emailed and texted Melissa's cell phone using Mrs. S's personal number and email address. At first, the exchanges were very general, sometimes unrelated to schoolwork, such as asking Melissa about a sick family member. Recently, the student began to text Ms. S more personal feelings, including questioning her own personal sexual preference.
So we assign the participants to breakout rooms. We go 10 or 15 minutes. We do not observe what goes on in the breakout rooms, and then we come back.
And we actually encourage dialogue that is diverse, so that there's no black and white answers to every one of these issues. Last week, we did Model Code of Ethics for Educators. There could be some disparity. There could be people who disagree with each other, and we encourage that kind of discussion.
So we ask them then, what possible issues and concerns might this scenario raise? And just like we are now with the view, people talk about what their experiences were and what they think these experiences, how they would apply to the fact scenario. And then I try to give some suggestions from my experience looking at case law, where you look at the same question and then I go through a suggested response. This is from a variety of sources, and I also say there may be something here they do not agree with, but this is my understanding of what the response should be to that question. Then also on this slide, we say, could you please present as to what your responses would be to question number 2? And here we ask them to be as specific as possible to their local school entity policies, and the PA Code of Conduct that we just studied that session, but then other PA statutes or regulations they may have heard of. And then I would go over it, and I would make reference to here, I feel it is a violation to give out the personal email and phone number by the instructor. I think there also may be a violation of, if the student was failing, should a teacher encourage him or her to go to their subject matter instructors to let them know that they're having a problem with their subject? May the parents then not respect the teacher raising the question because she tutored her personally when maybe the student should have gone to other tutors? We feel there is a boundary violation, and the question is about the conversation they're having. And then this is the new one, that once it goes on to a reference dealing with sexual preference of the student or the educator, then that's a place where the educator is supposed to shut it down according to the new code. Can I ask if you have questions or comments? That's our how we would address an introduction to the PA Code of Conduct. Mr. Martin, would you like to comment?
I don't know if he has a microphone.
Okay. Well,
Okay, he just commented, thank you. I appreciate the information in chat. And we're appreciative you came in on this. This will actually be recorded. It is recorded and will also available for viewing at a later time.
okay.
Tom, if you unshare your screen, I will share our mini advertisement.
Okay, just going to put this up and then I will stop the share, Paul.
Okay, and now I will share my screen. Let's see this. So next week, session 4 on June 20th at 4:30 p.m. Tom will cover the Pennsylvania Professional Standards and Practices Commission. And the following week, 3 weeks in a row, or 4 weeks, 5 weeks in a row, we'll look into the Educator Discipline Act. All of these will be on that www.twbailey. It's at twbaileylaw.com.
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to mention to everybody is that we are providing 2 kinds of classes for school system leaders and career tech center administrators. PIL credit class, there's a 25-hour PIL ethics continuing education course. And we have dates for that beginning on, help me here, September 19th. We'll have actually 25 hours that will give a much more detailed approach to this. And then we also have a summer or maybe at a different time in-service non-credit ethics course, which provides a little more flexibility, a hybrid program that gives some of the same content as the PIL course using a webcast. And then you can choose it to view that over 3 weeks with your staff and then apply the concepts to your own actual ethical dilemmas in your school district. And then there will be availability for pre-recorded 4-hour webcast site license, and then webinars that would follow either Zoom or in person. All of this material is, now I get the website right, on www.twbaileylaw.com. And I'd encourage you to go up there because there are a couple other surprises up there, including a wonderful educator blog on court cases. Some of those court cases are scary, of different things that have happened, true actual cases that are being covered in Pennsylvania. So thank you for coming. We hope to see you next week and in the future.
Okay. You want to stop the recording?
I will. Thank you, Scott. Take care.